Hello and welcome. The ELINT rework patch has been out for a week, so let's go through all the updates that have come out with it. So on the screen you'll see a Pinard as you're familiar with it. You'll notice straight away that there is an electronic signal at the back, so every time a Pinard's line of bearing occurs, one of these signals will be identified to show you where that is. So as per previous tutorials and how it operates, somewhere along this line and within the area that the Pinard's line of bearing is jumping around is a ship. This line can now be seen when another ship is selected, or if we select no ships, this will persist both for our fleet and across friendly fleets as well. So previously you could only see the line of bearing if you selected the ship that had the Pinard, which was quite annoying and didn't provide that information across the rest of the fleet. So now when two ships have their electronic support modules or their Pinards on, the purple line of bearing will actually change to become an electronic intelligence track. This represents that two ships with Pinards now triangulate with each of their lines of bearings. The ELINT track is represented by the red E with a red cross in the background. You'll notice that the ELINT track now provides a history of where it is, with the red history dots appearing as the track is updated. So now we can roughly see that this enemy ship is somewhere within this area. And if we were to move it into a 3D space, you can see roughly where it is in 3D. The electronic intelligence track will remain until that ship moves close enough to be identified by one of your active radars, which is the case of these three ships here. By having multiple ships with Pinards on and spread across the map, the accuracy of these ELINT tracks will increase. If ships are too close, then you will not receive this track. Note, for this to work, you can't have two Pinards on the one ship, as that won't increase the accuracy. You need Pinards on different ships to spread out to get the increased triangulation on the target. You can, however, still maintain two Pinards on either side of a frigate or other ships in order to provide the 360-degree coverage around that hull. ELINT tracks are now considered as first-class tracks, meaning that you can actually engage them. So by selecting a ship, I can fire a missile or I can fire a gun. However, with the unknown nature and the fact that it doesn't have any positional or velocity errors, you'll likely miss with a lot of your gunfire and railgun fire. However, with missiles, you may still make contact and hits. So to support the new ELINT mechanic and the rework that has occurred, the Pinard module has had its text updated. Ship tracks will no longer have a red ring displayed around them. So as you may have seen in the intelligence tutorial, each of the ships would have had a red ring around them so that you could sometimes identify or guess based on the size of that ring, the class or hull of that ship. Now with that red ring removed, intelligence will become a little bit more important, as you cannot tell which of these ships are which, noting that they are actually all three different hulls. Here you can see a Sprinter, an Axford, and a Rains, or a Corvette, a heavy cruiser, and a frigate. So intelligence now becomes a little bit more important in order to identify that. We've had the withdrawal line become a little bit more prominent in past updates. However, just to become a little bit more cognizant, if you are withdrawing a ship past the line, every 5 seconds after your ship passes the withdrawal line, you will receive a notification in the form of a warning sound. So here we can see at the 80-second mark, the sound will play. So now you have not only the warning, the sound, but also the line in order to represent the fact that you're withdrawing your ship past that withdrawal line, or what is most likely the case, trying to navigate around an object and accidentally moving past this line. So we previously had 500, 1000 and 1500 as the victory point conditions for control. We now have 2000 and 2500 have been added for those who want to play a little bit longer, particularly on those larger maps. So the adaptive radar receiver has gone through a bit of an update. It still maintains its 25% sensitivity, enabling you to find things at a longer distance. However, it's also had a new statistic added to the game, being noise filtering. So noise filtering is a decibel reduction in both ambient and jamming noise, making sensors harder to jam. So what does this mean? It means that when the enemy is trying to jam you, they will need to output more jamming power than they normally would with, say, a blanket jammer in order to bypass this noise filtering, basically adding extra wiggle room for you to be unjammed. So as a result, the points have gone from 20 points now up to 30, a 10-point increase, and a positional error and a velocity error has now been added. So this can be mitigated through the use of track correlators, in order to bring that back down, and offsets the adaptive radar receiver to stop everyone spamming this one. As a result, all other search and fire control radars now have a noise filtering statistic added. However, in most cases, that is 0. The other change to ships comes in the form of the destroyer's mass driver, which has had its reload time reduced from 60 seconds down to 45 seconds in order to cycle through and fire a little bit quicker. And this is to bring it in line with the rail battleships and the rail heavy cruisers, which were the more favourable rail platforms, as they could fire quicker and they could output more shots per minute. So a real bugbear for a lot of players previously playing multiplayer is that when one teammate disconnects due to whatever reason, that their ships are immediately destroyed, and therefore a fair amount of combat power is withdrawn from that team, generally resulting in a loss. So Mesa has fixed this with an ownership transfer of ships after a player has disconnected. A disconnected player's fleet is going to try and transfer itself to other players in a certain sequence. So remembering that there is a 10 hull limit per player, so if someone has 10 corvettes, they're not going to be able to receive any ships. So first, it's going to try to give all the ships to one player if there's room for them to take it. If the whole fleet can't be transferred at once, then the game's going to look to divvy up formations to players that have those available slots. If it can't hand off an entire formation, it'll try to hand off the largest fraction of a formation, and then it'll start to divvy out individual ships. And this is probably the point where most players will start to receive those ships if they have larger fleets. It's important to note, however, that after the game has cycled through these 5 or 6 actions and tried to hand off a player's fleet, if all players have no available slots left, then those remaining ships from the player that disconnected will be destroyed. So a small change, but a welcome change. DC lockers will now show how many restores they have, and then how many have been used. So you can restore a DC locker in order to get restores back. If this locker that I have highlighted was destroyed but I hadn't used any restores, well, I can restore that for 1, and then because there was 2, I would then have 1 more remaining in that locker. So you can get some of those restores back. Alternatively, you can also not restore anything because you know that it has nothing left. So one thing that I can't visually show you, but is a good change to the game, is how power is now used. Power was basically on all the time. So each of these components was going to draw power regardless of whether or not they were actually doing something in game. So what happens now is that components on the ship will only draw power when they actually are using power or active. So for example, if I have an Aurora here and it's requiring 700 kilowatts of power, if it's not in use, it's not going to draw that 700 kilowatts, and therefore that can be diverted to radar or weapons or anything else, jammers perhaps. So as we start to lose power within the rear of the ship, if I actively turn off my point defense or turn off my jammers or don't use my blanket jammers, then I can divert more of that power to some other things that I want to actually use. So one thing to note is that there'll be some things that always draw power. For example, the frontline radar will always draw power because it is always considered on, same as the track correlator. So now towards the end of the battle, when you've actually lost a few of your reactors and your drive, so you'll be able to still maintain in the fight. Finally, the performance on Caltrop has been increased, so hopefully when you're playing now, you'll get less lag and you'll be able to actually enjoy the beautiful map that it is. And I'm looking forward to getting a few more games on it in the future. Alright, so that's the end of this update. It'll be interesting to see how the ELINT change has affected how people are building ships and playing in game. And I think it'll be a really good change, and I'm really keen to get a few more games in, as I haven't really played for the last couple of weeks with life being a little bit busy. Other than that, take care, and I hope to see you later.